With Indiana's tourism industry under assault, tons of scrutiny, Republican Mike Pence has finally okayed some changes to Indiana's controversial religious freedom law to provide protections for groups that felt like the law would allow them to be targeted for discrimination by businesses in that state. The revised legislation prohibits providers from using the law as a legal defense for refusing to provide services, goods, facilities, or accommodations. It also bars discrimination based on factors that include race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or United States military service. And so, coming out of this, I'm really left with the question, what does this bill actually do now?
Nothing.
Nothing.
It never did anything.
Yeah, nothing.
It was not, what the bill does was always irrelevant. Who the bill spoke to was what mattered. It was an attempt by conservatives in Indiana to say to fringe right-wingers who make up a staggering total of Republican voters there, hey, I know your life is falling apart and it's slipping away and everything you held dear, which is mostly people who are just like you feel like is slipping away. We're not going to let these gays take over, and we're going to do it by preventing the 3 bakeries in Indiana from having to make a wedding cake for gay people if they didn't want to. The law itself, the notion that somebody could have actually been excluded and that wouldn't have been overturned on appeal, it could have made life a little uncomfortable for some people, but it was all about messaging, and the message they sent was, we don't like you because you're gay, and that's the message they wanted to send, and they sent it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all about the message, I suppose. Mike Pence, everyone's saying that he is like the next big conservative up-and-comer. They're trying to push him. I mean, after completely bungling this, I don't know if that sort of reputation or aura is going to continue much into the future. Although, as bad as Indiana looks, and we're going to get soon to the effect that it's potentially having on the tourism industry, we have Arkansas going ahead with a similar bill, which seems disastrous. Considering
but they amended it first. They fixed it first.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but still, I would expect that with the national attention to Indiana, even if it does include the sorts of legal protections that previous state-level religious freedom bills had, it just seems like bad timing. Like, why push forward again when it doesn't really seem to accomplish much?
Look, these bills, it's the current day equivalent to the legitimate rape comment. It offends everyone, and it appeals to a very sliver of the extreme hard right, who you already have on your side anyway.
Yeah.
And they live in their own world. They live in their own bubble, so they think this is good. They think this will help them in the future. And perhaps it might for the primary, but there's no way it helps them in the general election.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we have to put ourselves into the frame of mind of someone who is legitimately worried about both gay marriage and also Sharia, because that's another, it's not getting talked about as much, but these religious freedom laws, there is some sort of concern over Sharia sort of wrapped up in it.
So I would just say, don't get mixed up in what the law says. What's significant is that they claim to have one of these rather, keep in mind the original religious freedom laws didn't have the quote marks around them. The original law was a religious freedom law. Now we have a religious freedom law. Yeah. The original law was to protect the Amish from having to put...
And to be clear, is this a federal law?
This is the federal law that was then mimicked by a lot of states, but the idea was that you could protect the Amish from having to put electric lights on their buggies, right? Because their religion didn't allow that. That was the intent. You could argue whether that's the kind of thing the state should get involved in. I would go with no, but other people would think yes. I would think no. If you're going to ride a buggy at night, no matter what your religion is, I think you got to put the lights on it. But they thought it was important.
Sounds dangerous.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not the argument. They wanted it. Here now was a way to send a message to conservatives that the gays aren't going to come here. They're not welcome here. And so by changing it even slightly, even though the change didn't actually put gays and lesbians under the same civil rights protections that other groups have in Indiana, the important thing is they backed off that law and prevented that law from being used as a means to defend yourself against a lawsuit. So basically, Indiana is where it was before this all started.
Right, and to bolster your comment that this is all just theater to appeal to the conservative right, when Mike Pence signed the law, he was surrounded by anti-gay activists.
Horrendous.
When he signed the first law.
Yeah, when he signed the first law.
Yeah, no, there's no, I mean, when Mike Pence, I'm sure we played it here, when Mike Pence went on with George Stephanopoulos, George, and gave his disingenuous responses there. I don't know whether this law is, why are you focusing on this? Because that's the whole reason you did it. Otherwise, there literally is no call for it.
Yeah. That was interesting that...
To me, that was like a Allison Grimes moment. Where
right, that's right.
Just answer the question.
Just be honest,
I mean, just evading it repeatedly makes you look more foolish.
Yeah.
Just answer the question.
And the conservative Christian organizations, when their announcements made after the first law was passed, was now we don't have to make cakes for gay people.
That's right.
And
what
so
kind
Cenk's
of
position,
baker? If you're baking wedding cakes, you're a celebratory person. You want everyone to have cake. I would think that these people would be most in favor of all weddings, perhaps gay weddings in particular, which have a tendency to be particularly festive.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of forces a new image. Like, I thought of like a baker as like someone who likes baked goods. They want to do something for parties. But now, like, I think of the soup Nazi. Like, if you fall out of line, if you're not in the exact demographic group we need, walk up, hand your money, no soup for you. Yeah. That's what it seems like. But overall, so Cenk's position is that the sort of the ironic outcome of this is that now they have the religious protections, but these groups now have special protection from that. So before, the gays didn't have any protection. Now they have special protection there, which seems to go against the entire point of having this in the first place.
They lost.
And also,
they lost. He's right about that.
I had been told when I was reading after the initial law was passed that this doesn't really change much in terms of protecting, that it doesn't actually stop businesses from discriminating from gays or allow them to, because they didn't have any state-level protections from businesses discriminating against gays before.
Most states
I don't know that I believe that, but so if that's the case, then now they actually do. So it seems like a massive fail for the
They
conservatives.
just can't use this law to defend themselves. This law gave them a defense against that. Now you still, again, run the risk of federal civil rights violations if you decide you're going to keep gays out of your restaurant. Those people will have some legal recourse to sue.
Yeah.
Now this law can't be used to defend themselves in that lawsuit. And the law, as it was written, was pretty clear that you could use this law to defend yourself, even if the government wasn't involved.
Wasn't a party.
Which was what distinguished that law from every other state.
Yeah. I think it's very important that this law, in its hideous form, was pushed back because, I mean, if it's just bakers and florists, that's one thing. But if you just extend that out a little bit and you allow public servants like police officers and firefighters to discriminate on the basis of their deeply held religious beliefs, where does it end? So I mean, if you're gay and your house is on fire, and I'm a police, I'm a firefighter, and I say, well, you're going to burn in hell anyway, so why should I risk my life putting out this fire, right?
Yeah,
it's
let's
crazy.
avoid that situation.
I mean, the whole thing. It's just they wanted to deliver a message, and they delivered the message, and they missed. And as always with these guys,
and nobody wants to go to that extreme anyway, right? I mean, this, like you said, this
Few
law is
want
bullshit.
to actually bar
It's
it.
total bullshit.
Although apparently now, if you bar gay people from coming into your pizzeria, at least, you can make $1 million. And so maybe it will be more popular in the future. By the way, it's interesting to me that
explain
the florist,
that story. That's worth explaining.
Yeah, so there's the pizzeria that it's going to be mentioned, I think, later on in the second hour. But there's a pizzeria that said that they were not going to make pizza for gay weddings, and they had to shut down because of the negative reaction to the horrendous comments. And now money is being raised for them, well over $500,000.
No self-respecting gay couple was going to serve pizza at their wedding.
I might, because I'm poor. Also, like the people who rent the tents for weddings, the chairs, they don't seem to have a problem with gay people. It's just the florists and the bakers. It's odd. That is such a big industry. But anyway, let's talk about the overall consequences, because what they're trying to do by changing the law is taking some of the negative repercussions, the PR, possibly effects on tourism, and so they're trying to reverse that. Now, take a look at this picture. There's going to show you a screenshot from the website for Visit Indy. So Indianapolis want to make clear that they are not against gay tourists or gay people in their state. So they're very clear about that. So tourism in Indianapolis has grown to $4.4 billion in the past 8 years from $3.4 billion, added 10,000 new jobs for a total of over 65,000 full-time jobs in the tourism industry. Some 26 million visitors came to that city alone last year, up from 22 million just 9 years ago, according
I don't
to Visit Indy.
believe one of those numbers, but nonetheless, that is the most. That's where tourists go in Indianapolis. Look, man, we all lead different lives. Steve correctly mocked those conservatives for living in a bubble. I live in a bubble too. Everybody lives a little bit in their own bubble. We are, I hope, big enough to recognize it. But I'm thinking, who goes to Indianapolis on vacation? Like, what kind of?
I don't know. I hear they've got good food and music.
What kind of nonsense vacation is that?
I mean, people who are.
You know what? I'll stay
I
home.
don't.
Yeah.
And we know specifically they said you're going to love this. So Gen Con, are you familiar with Gen Con?
Yeah.
The massive convention. So Mike Pence personally called the leader of Gen Con, the lead organizer, to ask him, no, please don't leave.
Those are
we need you here.
gamers, right?
Gamers who apparently contribute over $50 million each year to the
conservatives were outraged that they came just because of the beginning of that name. They're like, they're gamers? Jesus, keep them out. Not welcome in our state. It's just it's so dumb. But also, you see what happened happened here is you had, the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce react so quickly, like, hey, we're the city's biggest state. The capital is here.
We don't have anything to do with
we don't
this.
have anything to do with this. And then to pass a law and get condemned within 48 hours by NASCAR.
Walmart.
And in Arkansas, Walmart, for the same law. I mean, you have misjudged your audience significantly.
Yeah, it's such a massive fail on every front. And look, this ship has sailed. If you're on the wrong side of this issue, you're just on the wrong side. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there are some, but for people under the age of 40, this is not an issue. And if
how could you care?
I mean, hating on gays and discriminating against gays is so 1990s or whatever. I mean, it's done. So if you're on the wrong side of this, you're gonna get penalized heavily by the media, by your fellow conservatives, certainly by business interests. I mean, you've lost in every conceivable fashion.
That's what you said, but you fellow conservatives, and certainly fellow Republicans, certainly old school Republicans, who seem to be losing the battle, at least for the public voice of the party, sort of business conservatives. I mean, Lord knows they're still winning the money race, but they're like, they got no interest in this. We don't want to boycott. We don't want, Angie's List doing away with a $40 million renovation to their offices in Indianapolis. Clearly, there was going to be enormous pressure that everybody in sports would have started to put on. It's one thing, they can't move the Final Four. It's too quick.
Yeah.
But the NCAA is based there. You could move your offices. Their offices used to be in Kansas City or in Kansas. You could spring up and move in Overland, Kansas. You could move them back and leave. That was all going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think they very quickly recognized, hey, even people who we think are our friends are like, hey, no, don't do this.
Yeah.